Now let's get you up to speed on what the border crisis means for local schools. Tonight on Pronews 7 Investigates, educating the undocumented. You'll get an inside look at two local school districts who already deal with large populations of undocumented students and what their policies are for educating these students. Pronews 7's David Grasso-Ortega is in the studio with more. David?
I spoke with the superintendents of Farwell and Hereford ISDs, and they told me they don't know who is documented or undocumented among their student body. And this won't change if unaccompanied minors arrive at their doorsteps, because schools across the United States simply don't inquire about their students' legal status in this country.
All of this is because of the decision in 1982 that obligates the schools to provide an education to all children, even those unlawfully present.
Legal scholar David Strange is talking about the Plyler versus Doe case, which struck down a Texas statute that didn't allow illegal immigrants to enjoy a public education. But this creates some issues for public schools around the country, as they have to take absolutely anyone who shows up, including the most recent wave of unaccompanied minors that have entered this country in recent months.
As they're released to family members or guardians, they could go anywhere in the country. And so that's the difficulty in predicting how many children are coming in, because the numbers at the border don't necessarily reflect what children are going to be released into what city or town.
Because all students in the United States are guaranteed an education regardless of legal status, local authorities usually have to play a guessing game and really don't know how many students they'll have until the very first day of school.
We don't know who's going to show up at school on day one, if the immigrants coming in and well, really anyone that moves around the state. We live in a highly mobile population, and we try to prepare as best we can for the students that show up on day one, but ultimately, we don't know until the first day of school.
While the influx of undocumented minors may or may not affect the Texas Panhandle and eastern New Mexico, school districts in our area already handle thousands of undocumented kids. We spoke with one mixed-status family who says they're currently working towards legalization to match their American-born children's status.
Es su país de ellos este.
This is my children's country. Although some people say no, they're Mexican, the reality is they're from here, and they have the same rights as any American-born citizen.
La realidad es que ellos son de aquí.
Both superintendents of Farwell and Hereford ISDs told Pronews 7 that educating the youth, regardless of their status, is their duty as educators.
If you don't educate the people who are going to be here, then what can you expect them to do when they become older or they become a burden on society? You don't want them to be that burden. You want them to be contributors.
We're here to serve people that show up at the front door, and that's our job as educators.
Zelda Howell, an immigration lawyer who represents some unaccompanied minors who recently crossed the border, says that despite the challenges of preparing schools for their arrival, it's a worthwhile effort.
Those kids could be here for their entire lives, depending on whether they win their cases or not. So it's hard to prepare, but it's worth it to try.
These are kids who are fleeing poverty and violence. We've seen their stories in the news, and they're choosing between death and taking a chance crossing the border. And obviously, they prefer to take a chance.
And tomorrow on Pronews 7 Investigates, Educating the Undocumented Part 2, we'll find out what the consequences of a broken immigration system are for local schools, including a state funding system in Texas that is simply not providing enough for many schools. From the Kennedy Broadcast Center, David Grasso-Ortega for Pronews 7.